gross negligence, and that's a legal term. Like, you literally had to know better, and we've proven it. It was just bad from day one. Lackadaisy, sketchy on the investment. Let me tell you who's in trouble here. He knew people were complaining. She's going to go down first, okay? Then it's on the AD. He's going to go down next. They hired this young girl that did not nearly qualified to be running all that, and then gave her 3 titles to be cheaper on top of that. And he's getting sympathy right now because he was hit. But I'm going to tell you right now. So he's the linchpin in all this. She should have been checking her shit. It's the investment method. It's the investment model that's causing this.
Jeff Stearns, connected through cars. If they're bigwigs, we'll have them on the show. And yes, we'll talk about cars and everything else. Here he is now, Jeff Stearns.
You have a movie studio.
Yeah.
Scaramanga.
No, that's the movie ranch, yeah. And then on property, we have stuff. Scaramanga. Francisco Scaramanga, the man with the golden gun.
Connected to the ranch where all this Rust Baldwin stuff.
The Rust thing, yeah, that's it. That happened at Bonanza Creek. Imogene Hughes, who was the owner, a dear friend of mine. I love to say this lady was 86 years old, right? Skinny as a rail, beehive, haircut, and gray hair that was twice her size. To say I was in love with this woman, I was in love with her. Right. She really took me in under her wing and was showing me how to do the whole movie ranch stuff. We'd have midnight pizza once a month over at her place. She's just a godly, wonderful person who like knew everybody on the, like Ron Howard. She'd call him Ronnie. Oh, Ronnie was here, blah, blah, blah. They all loved this lady. She's got the largest movie ranch and most historic in New Mexico. It's 2,500 acres, Bonanza Creek. It's got like 7 independent sets, and it's fantastic. We're small by all comparison. We're only 25 acres, but we own a canyon that nobody else owns, right? But wonderful people. Imogene sadly passed away 2 weeks prior to this incident with the ALEC Baldwin incident. And, in the end of the day, I'm going like...
Sadly, thank God she missed it.
Yeah, because I don't think she'd have handled it very well. They've been in the business for over 60 years in the movie ranch business, and never had an incident, right? Never. But then this happens, right? And I did a bunch of streaming interviews for folks that, because we're close to it, and they'd find out I'm a producer. What are my thoughts? All things being true, and of course that's what we're finding out is all things are true, right? There can be no better poster child for gross negligence than this film. Jeff, you may know this, maybe not. So legally speaking, right, in legal terms, the 2 highest, hardest things to prove in court, okay? So when people go, I'm going to sue you for fraud, blah, 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 you hear that a lot, right? Well, good luck. Fraud is one of the hardest things you can sue for. That's like, it is a high threshold to prove fraud. The other one is gross negligence, and that's a legal term. Not just negligence, willful negligence, anything like gross negligence. That means like you literally had to know better, and we've proven it, right? This film, and I know from insiders, because of course we're in one big happy film industry here, right? This thing was the poster child for this thing. It was just bad from day one. Lackadaisy, sketchy on the investment, this 501c3 type investments that are now like all the rage in Hollywood, which are really just a write-off, right, for people who want to maximize an investment, right? The Jews got it. They got it down. Jews got it down. That's why they make well in film. They got it down. I invest in 10, only need to hit on 1. But I'm going to literally watch 9 investments burn up like a hot wing, right? But this new 501c3 investment in film, which is this new way of people being able to put money into film, right, so that they can basically take it so that it's not taxed and all this sort of stuff.
So this is using a charity entity or shell?
Yeah, using a charity type entity, which I find anytime I won't touch anything that even breathes charity, right? Because people manipulate that all the time. And if you do get caught, you're going to go to jail, right? But this film was done that way, right? So it's a whatever $2.5 million film, which really means it's $2 million. Okay. $500,000 is burned off to producers, right? But this thing, these guys, boy, they literally did not. They hired the worst people, the cheapest people. Their film crew walks off that morning. Thank God for those folks, right? They literally walked off the set because of they're being cheap on everything, right? Half the crew is sleeping on the ranch because they didn't want to drive 50 minutes after getting off at like 12:30 at midnight and having to come in at 4 in the morning. They didn't want to drive to Albuquerque. There was promised places in Santa Fe and they didn't get it. And so they just sleep there, right? And finally the camera crew had enough and they quit, right? And, but let me tell you who's in trouble here. Everyone. Okay. A lot of this focus is on the armorer. Okay. She's going to go down first. Okay. Then it's on the AD. He's going to go down next. Okay. And then after that, Baldwin's right in there. He can't play the I'm just an actor in this thing, right? And executive producer by title. He co-wrote the thing, right? He's involved in all the day-to-day. He is the ground level executive producer, right? AKA showrunner, but in film, right? So none of this, it's not like this stuff is a surprise. He knew people were complaining. He knew people were upset. He knew people weren't getting to sleep properly. And then this accidental firing of the weapon a couple of times. They hired this young girl that did not nearly qualified to be running all that, and then gave her 3 titles to be cheaper on top of that, right? So she's overwhelmed, right? And he can't escape that. You can play it off, well, I'm just the actor, I'm depending. If he was just the actor, he'd get the lowest slap on the wrist, because he'd say there's 4 people above me that should have known better, even though he should have checked the weapon, right? He's the last in the line of this. Last in the line, and he didn't do it, right? But on top of it all, and then the one you're not hearing about yet is the director, because the director was shot behind, went through the cinematographer, hit him, and he's getting sympathy right now because he was hit. But I'm going to tell you right now, in a television series, most people don't know this, in a television series, the director is not important. They're a superfluous title.
Explain that, or please explain for the audience, including me, that wouldn't know what. Tell us why.
Okay, in television, the producers govern, right? We're the controllers of the creative content and the vibe of the show and all this stuff in television, right? The director is literally a hired hand, right? They're there just to orchestrate and get through this episode, right? So you can have multiple episodes, you can have a director, like if you're like All in the Family or all these things, it was like literally a new director for every episode, okay? Because the director doesn't they're literally just orchestrating it, right? And keeping it organized, and we get through this thing. But who makes the creative call and the decisions is the producer level. Now, that being said, in film, it's just the opposite. In film, the most important person is the director, beyond the producers. The director it's their vision and and they make the call. Okay, so there's impossible that all these negative things are happening and this anger with the crew, and they're walking off the set and then being told if they don't get off set, the cops are going to be called. You don't do that without the director setting that perspective in place, right? So he's the linchpin in all this. Nobody's talking about it because he's getting the empathy because he was shot. But that, I'm going to tell you, as this stuff flushes out, that guy's going to be back in this mix because he is the quintessential top this, right? Then it would go down to the executives, the ground level executive producers, active producers. That would be Baldwin, right? So there's your 4 people, right? You got Baldwin, you've got the director, you've got your AD, which this guy's a ding dong, and then your armorer. And I can't blame the armorer. The thing is, people are so desperate to get in this industry, they take these roles on, right? And I don't want to say I don't want to blame her. She should have been checking her shit, okay? But what I'm saying is they brought in a seriously under-experienced armorer on a show that is going to be using shit tons of weaponry, right? And then on top of it all, be cheap asses. They gave her 2 other titles, didn't give her any assistants, right? That can help control all this stuff. Again, on a show that is using fucking weapons. She's overwhelmed. Now, again, that's not an excuse. When you accept that job, and you accept those terms, then you got to live up to them. But my point is, these shows are being cheap, and it's not has nothing to do with independent, because independent film getting kicked in the ass right now. Oh, it's all independent. No, it's the investment method. It's the investment model that's causing this, right? These people are doing this investment model, don't give an absolute crap about the quality of the show or what they're doing. They just want to get in as cheap as they can, hoping that something good comes out of it so they can maximize their profits. It's not like when a studio's investing or you got private investors in your film and everybody is rah, rah, rah. We want this to be the greatest film ever. These are people these producers that they had, they're not real producers. They arguably say they are, but they're not real producers. All they care about is the investment model and maximizing the money back to the investors under this model. But, this thing was bound to happen. They were cutting so many corners. This is just the most extreme. This is the most extreme thing, but something was going to happen.
This has been Jeff Stearns, Connected Through Cars.